In 1 Chronicles 4, 9 to 10, we meet a man whose mother gave birth to him with so much pain that she called him Jabez, which means he will cause pain to others. And this man was more honorable than all his brothers. Now in verse 10, we hear the heartfelt prayer that this man prayed to God. Jabez asked God to bless him. It's like he cried out from the depths of his heart that God should bless him and expand his territory. So he knew he had already been born with a constraint, with a curse to cause pain. And I'm sure that living with that curse on him hadn't been easy. So he prayed to God to bless him and expand his territory away from the box he had been constrained from birth. And then he asked God that God's hand should be upon him. Because when God enlarges his territory, he will need God's guidance to operate in the expanded territory according to the will of God. And then he asked God that God should cause him to not cause pain on anybody. So he asked God to change the writing that had been put upon him by his mother from birth, something he had no control over. And verse 10 ends by saying that God granted his request. Now you must understand that Chronicles, in that chapter in Chronicles, the Bible was just listing the names of the sons of Judah. And then it stopped in verse 9 and 10 to just tell us about Jabez. And it is clear that this prayer was so profound, it challenged God. And we meet Jabez in just verse 9 and 10, and that's the end. No more Jabez in the whole of the Bible. Now, God clearly wants his children to challenge him. So I urge you today to challenge God, to ask God in your own quiet time, from the depth of your heart, to remove the constraints that have been put upon you, ancestral constraints, constraints at birth, constraints of sickness, curses upon your family that you have accepted. You know, some people say, in my family we don't go to school, in my family we don't make money, in my family we don't have boys, we don't get married, we always have this sickness, we die young. You hear all sorts of things that people have just accepted because they have been fed these things by birth. Oh, I was born with this sickness, and you have to just accept it. The thing is, you can live with whatever physical attributes you're facing, but you don't all have to accept it in your place of prayer. Like Jabez, you can pray from your heart, consistently challenging God to change that writing that had been put upon you, over which you had absolutely no control. You can ask God to expand your territory so that you can operate outside the constraints you have put yourself in, the constraints of not being able to achieve your dream because of one reason or the other. Because there's always a way for God to find, to put you back onto that path he has set. But you have to ask him. You have to find the strength. You have to find the boldness like Jabez to hold on to God and ask him from the depths of your heart to enlarge your scope. So I join you to pray today that whatever constraint, whatever box you were born with, you have been put in, you have put yourself in, that it be removed from your life now. In Jesus' name.